up with my mom. So she puts on my dad's clothes. She puts a hat on. She gives herself a mustache with some eyeliner. And we take off to go see her mom. We meet up with our cousins on the front porch at my granny's house, and we ring the doorbell, and we're just waiting for the fun to begin. And my granny loved her grandkids, and she invited us all into her little living room, and Mom had told us, do not let the cat out of the bag. Don't say anything if she asks about me. So sure enough, we're standing there in the living room, and Granny looks around, and you can tell she's laughing at what, I don't even know. There's no telling what I was dressed as. And then she gets to my mom, and you could tell she just was like, I wonder who that is. And we made up some story. I think we told her that she was a friend of one of the cousins that was there, and we just kept looking at Granny. And I don't know if I can do this. As my Granny was talking, my mom is standing right beside her. And she reaches around very slyly and pinches my Granny on the bottom. And my Granny's feisty. My mom should have known better. And before we knew what happened, my Granny drew back and punched my mom in the arm. And we're all just stunned. And then we just fell out laughing. But then my Granny was even madder when my mom took off the hat and she started talking to her in her regular voice instead of, hello, that voice. And Granny realized that she had been had. And I think she punched her again. I'm pretty sure she did. That was like the best Halloween ever. That's what I remember about Halloween, is my Granny thinking that her daughter was a creepy man. It was just one of those mistaken identity stories. There's another story I want to tell you about how sometimes we don't even know our own identity. We don't even know who we really are. And when I was in Ethiopia a little over 5 years ago to pick up our daughter Annie, I had the pleasure of meeting a lady named Kim from Wisconsin. And Kim was there to pick up her 5th teenage son from Ethiopia. And I have to add in there that she was around 60 years old. So it was a great, great story. But I was there that day that her new son, Kasahun, arrived at the guest house where we were staying. And he came to the door in dirty, torn, ratty clothes, smelling like goats that he had tended and probably slept with. And he came in that door as a servant, as a mistreated servant, an orphan at best. But Kim didn't care. She wrapped him up in hugs and kisses. She gave him new clothes that fit him and shoes. He had his first warm shower. So when dinner came, we're all at this common table for dinner. And Kasahun comes in. And I remember, he doesn't speak English. And she motions for him to come to the table. So Kasahun pulls out a chair about 2 feet from the table, and he sits down. And he sat there the whole meal. And we talked and we laughed, but most of the time Kasahun's head was down. Every once in a while you would see him smile, but it was almost like he thought he shouldn't smile. Like he thought that he didn't belong at that table. And he just didn't know who he was yet. He didn't know Kim. He didn't know that she already loved him. He still saw himself as that dirty servant that arrived at the door. He just didn't know who he was. And it took him a while to step into that identity. I think I have a picture of him. Maybe. That's him now. She's my friend on Facebook. And I think Kasahun has stepped into his identity. I think he knows that he's loved and who he belongs to. She also has his brother, who he hadn't seen in a couple of years prior to coming to America, and 3 others, so 5 altogether. I was recently going out of town. This has been a crazy month of going out of town for me, and I'm ready for November so we can just kind of get back to normal. But a couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready to go out of town, and I felt awful. We had just gotten back from Colorado. I was still traumatized from riding a horse, and I had like this possible sinus infection. So I go to see my allergist, Dr. Beebe, maybe you know him. And I hate taking medicine, but I said, I feel terrible. I'm getting ready to fly out of town in the morning, and I don't want to feel awful. Just give me something. He said, oh, where are you going? And I said, really awkwardly, I'm going to a writer's conference. Because what weirdy does that? You know, who goes to a writer's conference? And he said, oh, are you a writer? And I stopped. I kind of hesitated for a moment. And I finally said, yes, I'm a writer. After I came back from that weekend at this writer's conference, I was more confident. It's like God renewed that gift in me, that calling, and I can say, I'm a writer. That's who I am. It's part of who I am. I'm a writer, and I'm okay saying that now, like I really believe. I'm a writer. I walk around the house. I'm a writer. I'm just kidding. I got a business card that says I'm a writer, so I guess I'm a writer. Our identity is something that we wrestle with, all of us. I know recently, a couple months ago, our life group was talking about just all of our inadequacies. Men and women struggling with just feeling inadequate. So it's something that we all struggle with. And last week, Trent was talking about rhythm. And he had this great picture of a backpacker, actually two. And he's been doing this long enough. He's hiked the Appalachian Trail enough times to know what he's doing, so he makes fun of people that don't. So last week, that's what he was kind of doing. The guy on the right, like, he wants to hike the trail, but he really doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what to bring, so he brings everything. That's how I pack for a trip. I don't know what I might feel like wearing, so I just put it all in there. This guy on the right, he doesn't know what he needs. So he ends up with this really heavy backpack. And Trent said when he's on the trail, you can see things thrown off by backpackers that have started the AT, and so they're throwing stuff out. They realize, I can do without this. I can do without that because my body hurts. My knees hurt from this loaded, heavy backpack. The guy on the left, I think that's Trent. Actually, it looks kind of like a girl. She knows what she needs to take. So she's got this light back. She's ready for the hike. She's ready to look around and see the scenery. And that's why she's there. But I got to tell you, like I was the camper guy. I was the one on the right until a few years ago. I was the one carrying a super heavy pack. And what Trent was talking about last week is the guy on the right is like, it's like us when we try to do everything. And we think we can. We think we have to. So we try to do everything and we try to be everything, and we end up completely weighted down. And we can't follow that path that God has marked out for us. So I was like that. I was that person that thought I had to do it all and be it all. And not just that, I had to do it perfect. So maybe you're like me. Maybe when you heard Trent teach this last week, you're like, well, wait a minute. Pastor Trent, you don't know my load. You don't know all the people that are counting on me. You don't know the responsibilities I have. There's nothing I can think of in this pack that I can lay down. And that was me. I was that person too. And maybe you read those scriptures from last week as Trent was reading them, and I have to tell you, the scriptures that he had up on that screen last week have chased me around for the longest time and driven me crazy because I couldn't figure them out. John 10:10 says, the thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you may have life, and have it to the full. A friend in this room pointed out that comma to me this morning. I told her one of the scriptures, and she said, do you want to live on the left side of the comma or the right? Isn't that cool? Do you want to have life, or do you want to have it abundantly to the full? Maybe you read that last week, and you were like, golly, that sounds awesome. That was me. I wanted that so much. The Message version is really cool, and I was telling Trent about it because every once in a while I pull out the Message, which is actually like a paraphrase by a guy named Eugene Peterson, but I love it. And the Message version says, come to me all, oh, wait. I skipped ahead, sorry. The other scripture that Trent shared last week was Matthew 11:28 through 30. And this one, It just seemed like every time I was listening to a speaker or I heard something on the radio or I picked up a book, this was the verse. And the NIV is what Trent read last week. And it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." Can you pull out? There's the Message version. Yeah, sorry. The Message version, and we've heard the NIV, but I just want to read this one. "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." Maybe you read that scripture last week, and maybe you've been wrestling with it, because that sounds like oxygen if your life is suffocating. That sounds like hope that you need, but maybe you just can't figure out, how do I do that? I want to stop just for a second and clarify, because just because Jesus said that he wants to give us abundant life, and he says that his yoke is easy, meaning, that farmer's yoke that Trent taught about last week, that we're in that with him and we're walking, that sounds awesome, but maybe you're not sure how to get there. I just want to tell you that he's not saying that life's not going to be hard. He told his disciples, in this world you will have, anybody know? Trouble. In this life you will have trouble. And he himself was overwhelmed to the point of sweating blood before he went to the cross. He's not saying we're not going to get tired. He's not saying that we're not going to have stress, because this life can be really hard. And there are seasons that are harder than other seasons, right? I remember when we had 4 kids, 4 and under. Oh my gosh, I just wanted to lay down and sleep. So I would just lay down and cry instead, because I knew they were going to be there in 2 seconds. I couldn't sleep. Life can be really hard. Sometimes we have suffering that comes into our life that we don't ask for. We didn't invite that suffering, but it's there. Sometimes we have responsibilities that we didn't see coming, caring for a parent. Yeah, life's going to be hard sometimes. Life is good, like the t-shirt says, right? But it's going to be hard. And it can be very tiring, but that's not quite what Jesus is saying. He's not saying, well, if you take my yoke on me and you walk with me and you live, it's going to be easy and you're not going to get tired and you can just rest and drink coffee all day. That's not what he's saying. But I couldn't figure that out. My big question was, well, Lord, what does that mean? What does abundant life mean? What does resting look like? Because what I'm walking in doesn't look like that. I was chronically overwhelmed. If that could be like a medical condition, I had it and needed some medication for it. I was always running on empty. I wanted so much to be good. I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted to be a good mom. If I stacked up all the books that I read, the self-help books about that, I don't know how many books I read. I was always reading a book. Always. Ask my husband. I probably drove him crazy. The Power of a Positive Wife, The Power of a Positive Mom. It was always, always a book on how to be better. That was my life. I was sort of like a hamster running in a wheel. I was so exhausted, but I wasn't going anywhere. Anybody feel like that? And I would look at that, and in my state of being overwhelmed, when I was curled up in a corner somewhere crying, saying, I'm so tired. I can't do this. I'm so overwhelmed. And then I would come back and read these scriptures about abundant life and the easy yoke, and I'm like, sign me up. I want that. I want abundant life. Easy yoke, are you kidding? I'll take that. That was me, but there were 2 beliefs in my life that were holding me back. And maybe they're the same hurdles that are standing in front of you today. So that's why I'm really excited about bringing this message. There's two beliefs in our life that really drive everything we do. And Trent's taught this before, Jason Glaze probably taught this before, but it is we're so passionate about it because we really believe a lot of people have somehow missed this along the way. Who I believe God is and who I believe I am drives everything in my life. I believed that I wasn't enough. That's the voice that I heard in my head. That was the little message. I believed I wasn't enough. Yesterday, someone posted on Facebook a little clip of Joanna Gaines. She's the one from Fixer Upper. Any Fixer Upper fans? Woohoo. And it was so cool. She and her husband were doing this video, and Chip, her husband, he actually said, the voice I hear in my head tells me, you're handsome. You're strong. If you've ever watched, he kind of has a little belly. He's like, that voice tells me, you can do that. You could make money doing that. But she was telling her story about how he really had to encourage her to step out. So I went back to YouTube and I found a clip of her story because I was really interested in why she didn't have that same kind of confidence that he had. And sure enough, in her story, she said, I grew up with a mom who was, I think, from Korea. Her dad was Caucasian. And she still remembers that first day of school where she walked in and she looked at all those kids, all those white kids that didn't look exactly like her. And she spun around and went to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall. She said that message, she said this in her video, I am not enough, followed me my whole life. That was my message that I heard all the time. And I'm not going to go back and tell my story as to why it was playing in my head, but it was there. So my whole life became an effort to be enough because I believed in the deepest parts of me that I was not enough. I wanted to be enough. And the only way I could figure out how to feel that way was by performing, by doing. Part of my journey to freedom, and I don't know how many times the word free was in the songs that we sang this morning, but it was awesome. Part of my journey to freedom was through counseling at a place called New Name. And one thing we had to do was to draw a picture of the person that we thought we had to be, our imposter. And I thought about that. I went home and I'm like, who's this girl that I feel like I have to be? So I got out a piece of poster board and a pencil, and I started to draw a picture of her. She came out looking like a superhero. I have a picture of her for you, so don't judge. She's got a T on her chest, and that stands for Together Girl, because I thought I had to have it all together, and yeah, that doesn't work. If you zoom in close, you can see all of Together Girl's great qualities. Those are the little things that people around her say. Mom, I cleaned my room. Can I have more fish? Dinner's in the oven. I love cooking. I don't. Blogger of the year. She was pretty much like the picture of perfection. She's really ridiculous. She's an illusion, and that girl right there is not me. She's impossible. But in my head, that little voice, you're not enough, drove me to try to be that girl, Together Girl. So in this journey at New Name, once I drew her, and I have to point out that there was a lot of perfectionism going on here in this poster. When I brought her back to the counselor, she was like, whoa. No one's ever brought in like a full-size poster colored and like, well, you know, trying to be good. But the next step was getting rid of her, of looking at her and saying, I don't have to be you anymore. And she actually told me like to call her ugly names. So I might have done that. I might have called her ugly names. And then I was supposed to destroy her. But I just felt like God was saying, you know what, she's not welcome in your home. You keep her out. But this needs to be a reminder to maybe somebody else on the journey to freedom. So, Together Girls, still around, but just for your benefit. I'm not sure who you think you have to be. I don't know if in your head you have an image of this man or woman that you think, if I could be him, if I could be her, I would be enough. It's ridiculous who I thought I had to be. And it drove the people around me crazy. You know, living with someone who constantly strives to be perfect, that's going to rub off on their expectations of the people around them. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into this. This is something that Trent says a lot. I know you've heard it, but we just are so passionate about it. Like I said before, I think people have missed this. Who we believe we are drives our actions. I mean, my life was proof of that. But I tried so hard my whole life to be somebody I already was. I was already loved. You know that whole loved, accepted, worthy, and secure. If you've been around Journey for very long, you've heard it at least once, probably a lot. Those are the things that make up who I am. After I got rid of Together Girl, I started looking through God's Word with fresh eyes because I knew I was free from being her. But Lord, who am I to you? Who really am I? And in God's Word, and through that counseling, I found out that I am loved, accepted, worthy, and secure. I'm loved not because of who I please, not because of how good I am. I'm loved because He says I'm loved. I'm His. I'm accepted just like I am, where I am, in my mess, in my imperfections. I'm worthy because worth is determined by what someone is willing to pay. And Jesus paid for me with His life. He made me worthy. I don't have worth on my own. He made me worthy. And I'm secure. I belong to Him forever. He's not going to take His love, His affection, His attention away from me when I screw up. He's got me. I am secure in Him. I'm not secure by controlling everything. See, when you don't feel secure, there's a need to control life, to control yourself, to control the people around you. But I'm already secure. I don't have to do that. My whole life was spent trying to be someone I already was. I am loved, accepted, worthy, and secure. And if you've placed your trust in Christ, so are you. Jesus sees me this way, and this is the identity He gave me. We're designed that way. We're designed to want love and acceptance and worth and security. And if we don't already have those things, we're going to do everything we can to try to get them. And in this world, the way that you get love, acceptance, worth, and security from people is by how well you perform. So it becomes sort of like a tight wire act. You're on this tight wire, and all of your energy is spent trying to keep it right here. Because if I don't, someone might not love me. If I'm not perfect, or if my posts on Facebook aren't perfect, I'm not going to get a like. I'm not going to be accepted. So this is what it looks like in your life when you don't have those. It turns into people-pleasing, comparing your walk, your family, your appearance to this other person that you think has it together or that might be better than you, or wow, she really is enough. Achievements, man, we work hard to achieve in school and as grown-ups. But it's a never-ending thing. You know, maybe you get this achievement and you're feeling better about yourself, but then you look over here and somebody else got this achievement. And if I don't get these achievements, that says that I'm not okay. I'm not good. I'm not perfect. Control. Like I said before, when you don't have security, you're going to look for it by controlling or trying to control everything around you, and codependency. You know, if you can be someone's hero, someone needs you, and you meet their needs, you feel worthy. You feel needed. I was recently reminded of another illustration, kind of like the backpacker, hiker, camper thing. Just an illustration of life empty and overwhelmed. So I can't claim this as my own. Someone else told me about this. But this is an empty cup. It's dry. And these straws are all those things in life that we give permission to take part of who we are. You know, our kids take part of our energy, part of our time, our job, whatever. But this cup is completely dry. And this is sort of like the backpacker who feels like he's got to take everything, the person who feels like I've got to do everything. And as I was thinking about that illustration of how so many times we can feel so empty, and we're so overwhelmed by all the things we have to do, all the roles we have in our life and the things that we have to be. It came to my mind that cup from Psalm 23. You know, that psalm it's almost like we've taken that Psalm 23. You know, the Lord is my shepherd. We could probably all say it. It's almost like we put it in a box and stamped 4 funerals on it. But when I thought of that image of my cup overflows from Psalm 23, I flipped my Bible open, even though I could say that psalm verbatim, and I started reading it. And you know what? It's really not about death at all. I even Googled to see if somebody agreed with me. And I even bought a book written by a guy who used to be a shepherd to hear what he had to say about Psalm 23. It's really about life. You know, and I thought, that overflowing cup from Psalm 23, isn't that like John 10:10, abundant life? Kind of the same thing, right? So I really dug into Psalm 23. So I want to read it to you, and I want you to think about this picture. Think about what we've been teaching about love, acceptance, worth, and security, and look for each of those in here, because they're all in here. The Lord is my shepherd. It means he's in charge. He's got this. You know, I'm in his little flock. He knows where I am. I lack nothing. I don't lack love. I don't lack worth. I don't lack acceptance or security. I have them all because he's my shepherd. That's all one sentence. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. I lack nothing because the Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. And I studied a little bit, got a little nerdy, and found out that quiet waters really means waters of rest. Hallelujah. Waters of rest. The shepherd knows what his sheep needs, right? Green pastures, some rest. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. I don't have to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and I certainly don't have to do all of this because he's got a path marked out for me. He's got the right way for me to go. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to control it. I don't have to seek out my own security. I will fear no evil because you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. The rod was like a stick. I kind of got nerdy on this too, with metal on the end, that a shepherd could beat off animals with. Bears, lions, whatever, hyenas. So the shepherd's got this rod. And he's fighting for you already. And then he's got this staff with a hook, and I'm dumb. I thought that was like to grab him around the neck. It's not. It was just to put around one of their hind legs to keep him from going the wrong way because sheep are stupid. So our shepherd, he's got this. He knows how to guide us. He knows how to protect us. This is cool because it kind of goes from David thinking about God as a shepherd to God being the host of a banquet. A banquet in whose honor? Yours. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. I would look at that verse in John 10:10 and be like, what in the world, Lord? Abundant life? An overflowing cup? Because mine's completely empty. This was me right here. He prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemy. In the presence of a world that says, you've got to do it all. You've got to look like this. You've got to be like this. And you need to post it all on social media so we can all see how wonderful you are. In the presence of all that pressure to get it together, to be perfect, he says, right in front of those enemies, I'm going to set a banquet for you. I'm going to pour your cup to overflowing. And when you read about that cup, it represented God's blessing and his goodness. God's goodness overflowing for you. Not an empty cup that we're trying so hard to. I just couldn't figure this out. Maybe you're there too. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God follows us. What does that say about the sheep? That a shepherd would follow that sheep. That sheep is worth something to the shepherd. That's our worth right there. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. If you look at it in the Message, there was a couple of things that were different. And I just want to point out, like in verse 6, your beauty and love chase after me every day of my life. In the banquet, Eugene Peterson paraphrased as a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. David wrote these words as a sheep, not a shepherd. He grew up being a shepherd as a boy. He knew all about that, so it was familiar to him. It was an image in his mind that he could relate to. But he wrote it as a sheep, and he knew his shepherd. You know, David was a guy who made some big mistakes. He didn't always get it right, but he's called the man after God's own heart. But he knew his shepherd. You know, he says, you're my shepherd. I don't need anything else. He knew God. He believed who God was in his life. But when you read it, you see what God believed about, what David believed about himself too. He knew he was loved. He said, surely love will chase after me. He knew he was accepted. He knew he was worthy. And he knew he was secure. He had a shepherd that was willing to fight off his enemies, that was willing to mark out a path. And it says, you guide me. His shepherd was willing to go with him. You know, the shepherd didn't leave the sheep all by themselves out in the pasture. But how many of us live that way? I did. I'm out here. I'm all alone. I got to figure this out. I got to get it together. But it was because I just didn't know who I was. I didn't know that I was already all of those things that I was looking for. I just want to tell you this morning that you're welcome at his table. He accepts you and declares you worthy. He has a path for you, and he walks it with you. And while you're resting in him and trusting in him, he's going to keep your world spinning. Sometimes we think we're way more important than we really are. You know, if I quit doing this, who's going to do it? Who's going to take care of this if I don't do it? God's got it. I love that song, Good Father. I think we sang it last week. And if we really believe that God is a good, good Father, then we can trust him. We can trust him to believe the next part of the song, and I am loved by you. That's who I am. When you sing that song next time, I am loved by God. It's who I am. You know, in the video about Joanna Gaines, she talked about how she always had this dream to do what she's doing now. I don't think she was dreaming of it, you know, on television. But she said she heard God tell her one day, I have something for you to do. You're going to have a platform. And that was before the word platform was a big thing. And she didn't know what that meant, but she just kept listening for God. And at one point, she had a store and had to close it, but she kept trusting God. He said, I'm going to make that store more than you ever thought it would be. Fixer-upper, hello. God had a plan for her, and she's glorifying God in that plan. And I just want to throw this out there. You know that when we're walking that tightrope and we're afraid of disappointing, afraid of failing, afraid of not being loved, not being accepted, our eyes are always on our feet, right? It becomes all about us. We may think, I am killing myself to take care of all these people. And we think it's about them, but really, if we're doing it to receive love and acceptance and worth and security, it's really about what we're getting. And it becomes all about us. But in the midst of that, when we've said yes to all of this, maybe God just really has this for us. Like Joanna Gaines' dream. Maybe he wants her to have this, but maybe she missed it because she said, I was so afraid of stepping out into that dream. Some of us are just too busy. If God came to us and said, hey, I've got this thing I want you to do, well, I'm sorry, Lord, there's no room. I don't have anything left. It's empty. Everything else has taken all that I have, but maybe it's that fear of just messing it up, afraid of being imperfect and not being able to do what God's asked you to do. But in all of us, there is a dream that God put there. And when I walked through that whole thing with New Name and I found my freedom and got rid of Together Girl and figured out who I was, do you know what I started doing? Writing. I've always loved to write. I still have my little journal of poetry from 6th grade. I know, that's nerdy, but I do. In high school, I got an award. I received a creative writing award. It was something that I loved to do, that God gifted me to do. And I can say that without feeling like I'm being prideful or arrogant. God gifts us to do things. He gifted me, but I was right here. And I didn't think I would do it very well, but when I found some freedom, I sat down at my laptop. And Trent said, what's something you could do to refuel yourself? I want to go to a blog conference. I want to write. That's good stuff. Being able to step into who you are. Because if you don't know that you're loved, accepted, worthy, secure, you're going to do everything because you're afraid that if you don't do everything, you're not going to do it, when really you're missing the one thing that God's asked you to do, that he's gifted you to do, that he's put you in a location where there's people around you who need that gift. I may never publish a book. Does that mean I'm not a writer? No. There are people who read my blog, and I may just write about what I'm struggling with, but one person contacts me in a message or a text and said, that is what I needed to hear today. Thank you. That's me walking in my gifting. But I couldn't do that until about 3 years ago because I was walking that tightrope, trying to be somebody I already was. And the pressure was awful. Last year, I started off the year working full-time, my second year working full-time, and I did that to help out the family, and it was just too much. And I would have these little meltdowns. I've talked to some of you about those little meltdowns. And one night I was sitting on the bed and I had my laptop and all my teaching stuff, and I was trying to do that and didn't know what in the world my 6 kids were into because I was so in that full-time job. And I just started crying and I said, Trent, I can't do this anymore. And he just quietly said, I know. And that was it. I quit my job. And I was so worried about letting down our principal, who's awesome. And I was worried about the finances. And I walk into the principal's office. I had to tell him I couldn't make it past Christmas. This was like October. And he was like, I get it. I understand. It's okay. The next day, he calls me back to his office. Can I talk to you? I'm like, oh, man. He's not going to let me out of my contract. And he said, hey, I've got this part-time job that I think that you would be perfect for. There's no paperwork. There's no planning. It's 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. God took care of the finances, and God took care of me in it. You know, we feel like we have to do everything, but God didn't say that. You know, Together Girl was not God's image of me. It was not his expectation of me. In fact, God's telling us not to try to do everything. If we are, it's from our own lack. It's because we don't really know who we already are. Remember Kasahun, my friend from Ethiopia. You know, he believed he was still that dirty servant. Even after the hugs and the kisses and the new clothes, he didn't believe it yet, but Kim loved him. She saw him as loved. She saw him as worthy. Obviously, she went to those lengths to bring him into her family. But he just had to learn to step into that new identity. Whether he believed it or not, it was true, right? I mean, she loved him. She accepted him. He was worthy and secure in her family. Papers signed. He was now part of her family. But the fact that he didn't believe it didn't make it not true. But he had to learn to step into that identity. And I just want to challenge you today. Can you step into who you really are? Can you pull your chair up to the table that God has set before you with an overflowing cup as belonging to his family with all the rights and privileges of being his child? And can you walk in that? Do you believe today that you're loved and accepted and worthy and secure? Or are you still exhausting yourself, afraid of being not enough? Are you overwhelmed by the goodness of God, or are you overwhelmed trying to be good? Do you know what path God has for you, or are you too busy trying to do everything to know what that one thing he has for you that only you can do? When I finished the counseling process at New Name, they ask you, what's your new name that God's given you? And it was so easy. I didn't have to think for a second. God said, you are enough. With a capital E, that is your new name. One of my friends that walked through New Name had her new name tattooed on her wrist as a reminder, you are loved. That was her new name. I want to ask you this morning, what is the name that God has for you? What is it that he wants you to step into? Because I tried so hard to be Together Girl. That's not what God had for me. God said, you're enough.
Billy, if you guys will come on up. Was it just me? I didn't want her to stop. You guys, I could listen to her teach for like hours. It's amazing. Why did you marry me? You're amazing. Thank you. It's incredible. So I'm confident that was God's message for us today. It's powerful. And for some of you, it's time to respond. I don't believe God speaks to us and then goes, okay, I'm done. You do whatever you want to do. I believe God speaks to us and he says, now do this. So this is what this time is always about. After God brings us his teaching and he brings us his message, he asks us to respond. So there's many ways that you can do that. Today you can take out your connection card and you can just write on the back there that this is, literally you can write on there, say this is what God told me today. And then make an action step. This is what I'm going to do this week in response to this message. For some of you, you may want an opportunity to come forward this morning and use this area as a sacred place to where you meet with God right now. This is a safe place to do that. If you want more privacy, you can go into a room over here to the side, or you can step to the back, and God will meet you right there. There's nothing really, there's no secret to this. It's just about you being honest and being vulnerable and being real with God in response to this. If you're here this morning and you've never heard the good news of Christ like this before, that God is giving you an opportunity to be who He's created you to be, and you don't have to do anything to get there. All you do is respond and simply say, "Here I am." And God says that He receives you into Himself as a new son, as a new daughter. That's why I call it good news, because you don't have to do anything to become a child of God. You just simply receive it and agree with God. That's when you become a Christian. That's what that means. So we're here for you this morning. My wife and I will be standing over here to the side. We want to offer ourselves to you to minister to you, but we don't want to get in your way. We don't want to get in God's way. We're just here if you need us. But you respond however God's calling you to respond. And then after today is over, we're here for you as a body of Christ. We're here for you. So let us know how we can continue this relationship and this connection as we walk together on this journey, this crazy journey of life, because we believe that it's better together. Will you stand? And let's respond.
The earth, make straight a highway, a path for the Lord. Jesus is coming soon. Call back the sinner, wake up the saints, let every nation shout of